I started playing drums at the age of 4. Started playing in clubs at the age of 6, but back at that time, it was more or less like R&B, soul music. If you hit dead center, dead center of the drums, you're gonna get a nice, big, fat, great, true sound from it. Which is learning, it's just going back to learning how to hit the drum. I was supposed to play with James Brown. I was offered the gig to play with James Brown.
Whoa.
When I was like 13 or 14 years old. I think I was 13.
Did you enjoy the show last night?
I really enjoyed the show. I love the sound of this place.
And obviously with Mike Stern last night, your old pal.
Who saved my life, by the way.
Really? Tell us, how did that happen?
Yeah, I was laying in my hotel room in a coma.
Dennis, back at the scene of the crime from last night. It's like it never happened,
What a scene. This is a great place, by the way.
This is the live area. We haven't done a podcast down here in a while, and we usually do it over in the museum, but it's gorgeous. It's just great to be, Did you enjoy the show last night?
I really enjoyed the show. I love the sound of this place.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously with Mike Stern last night, your old pal.
Yeah. Who saved my life, by the way.
Really? Tell us, how did that happen?
When they, before I had my downfall, my problem with my liver and all that stuff, there were no signs that I needed any kind of liver transplants or, I had holes in my esophagus line. I was bleeding out, didn't know it. There were no signs of it because I wasn't throwing up any blood or any blood was coming out anywhere. But my stomach it was just swollen.
Wow.
And it got to a point where they were like draining my stomach every 2 weeks. And it was like 21 pounds of fluid.
Oh my God.
They were draining out every 2 weeks. And with all of that going down, or how Mike found me anyway, I was laying in my hotel room in a coma.
God.
Laying in my own blood.
Oh my God.
And that's how he found me, and he got me to the hospital just in time.
So without Mike, you wouldn't be here?
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Oh dear. My God.
You guys would be talking about me in a different way.
Posthumously, God. It's really awful. But you're back, you're fit again, your health is good, and last night rocked the place. It was amazing. It was amazing. This is the first time I've seen you live, and it was just blew me away. And Mike as well, and the band were fabulous. It was just such a great show.
Yeah, I mean, normally we play at, like a bigger place where you don't have to worry about the volume too much.
Sure.
But in here, you have to worry about, you have to play for the room.
Right.
You can't, really crank it. Although Mike found a way to do that, which is, he still dug in. And it was okay. It was okay in here.
So did you have to lay back a little bit on the beat?
Oh, yeah.
Using the brushes a bit last night as well, I saw.
Well, that's the whole show. I mean, his show is basically, it's like, me playing a lot of brushwork. The songs that he chose for this tour.
So just going back a bit, I mean, there's a lot of the fans out there, I'm sure, would love to know a little bit about the early days. And because, the legend is you've been playing literally professionally since you were 6. Is that true?
Yeah, I started playing drums at the age of 4. Started playing in clubs at the age of 6. But back at that time, it was more or less like R&B, soul music.
Right.
Sam and Dave and Knock on Wood, that kind of stuff. And then, some Motown stuff. But never it was not serious until I got into, listening to somebody like Buddy Rich, which introduced that whole big band thing to me. And then from there, digging back to the jazz part of it, listening to Art Blakey and Elvin, Roy Haynes.
Wow. So how did you originally get discovered at 6? I mean, because playing in clubs, how did that happen?
There was this guy named, his name was Rat, and I forgot I think that was his nickname, Rat. I don't know why they called him that, but he was a bass player. He just happened to be going home from work one day. I lived on this busy street called Preston Street at the time. My mother lived on this street called Preston Street. And he heard drums while he was waiting in traffic. And he pulled the car over, followed the sound of the drums,
wow.
knocked on the door, and asked my mother, could he see me play? And when he saw me play, he was amazed that somebody that small can play grooves and stuff like that.
Amazing.
And then the whole idea was like, for me to play with the band as a novelty act, because he had a drummer.
Well, sure, yeah.
Who played mainly the whole show. It's just that when I played with him, I think I played about 5 songs or something like that.
Wow.
And the other thing was, back at that time, cops were they were patrolling the area on horseback. So Mr. Henry, his name is Henry Baker,
right,
owned the club called the Peyton Place, which is where I saw Miles Davis in that place, that club with Tony Williams. That was unbelievable. He used to pay the cops not to come into the club on certain days.
Wow.
And the days I played, that's when he paid the cops.
Miles Davis was one of the first artists that you saw at that young age, like with a drummer like Tony Williams. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
And that must have had a massive impact on you, singing Tony Williams.
I couldn't understand any of it because it was just so far beyond me. But I couldn't keep my eyes off of the band, and especially Tony. And I couldn't sleep for like 48 hours after seeing that band. That was amazing.
And you're completely self-taught?
Yeah.
So you're just listening to records and watching guys and figuring out what they're doing?
Yeah, but a lot of people had done that. Buddy Rich wasn't the reader or anything like that. But, we had great musicians around us. There was great music with great musicians playing this stuff. And when you listen to somebody like James Brown or Al Jackson that played on Stax recordings and stuff, those were great teachers.
Right.
All you had to do is listen to them. And that's what I did. Just listen and emulate. The whole thing actually started from with my mom. My mom was a background singer for Motown.
Oh, fantastic.
She left she wasn't there that long. She left Baltimore, stayed in Detroit for a while, and then came back because she didn't like Berry Gordy and that whole scene there. And by her being, associated with Motown at that time, she was like a local celebrity. And her band used to practice at my mom's apartment. And I would sit there. And in fact, that was the only thing that would keep me still. Just sitting there watching the drummer play. I could still see the kit.
Wow.
It was a Champagne Sparkle Gretsch kit, 4-piece.
Nice.
With these shiny gold-looking, they were cymbals, but I thought they were flying saucers on the stand. That's how I related to them. The sound that was coming off of it was amazing. So every time the band's rehearsal was over, I would pick up stuff and just started trying to emulate them. They brought me a drum kit at the age of 3.5 or something like that.
God.
My neighbors tore it up. I was depressed. my father noticed my different than my mood, and they brought another drum kit. This time it was a real kit. They custom built it. I think they turned the bass drum into a bass. They turned the floor tom into a bass drum.
Okay.
And put like I mounted a bass drum mount on it and put a 10 on there, a 10-inch tom and a 14-inch floor tom.
So your parents must have really believed in you being that age and buying you a kit. They must have saw something, thought it was a little special about you, because that young.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird for me. It's like, like I said, by me watching that drummer play, Booney, I knew without knowing that that's what I wanted to do. Because all I heard was just rhythm, constant rhythm, constantly listening to music from the age of 4 up until, I say in my 40s and maybe 50s. Because I would always have headphones on and I'm always listening to stuff, always trying to learn something.
Because I noticed that about your stature last night when you were playing drums. You sit up really straight. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of drummers, they're like hunched a little bit, but you're very disciplined in your physique and in your stature behind the kit. I think I remember reading somewhere that you used to practice with phone books under your, yeah.
That's something I got from Billy Cobham. Putting phone books under your arms just to be centered to the drum kit. And, also keeping everything down here. At that time, when you're playing jazz, everything is, you don't swing your arms out or anything like that. It's just all down here because everything is close on a 4-piece kit.
So when you were younger, did you use the match grip or the traditional grip?
Traditional grip first. And then when I saw Billy Cobham with the Mount Vishnu Orchestra, that went out the window.
For the power.
Yeah, the power, the speed, the finger control and the practicing on pillows, not on a rubber pad or anything like that. Just practice a lot on down pillows, because you want to build up your speed naturally.
Absolutely.
Just using a lot of muscle control.
And you were going back to the very first proper gig you saw with a proper, inverted commas, drummer. Would that have been, as you said, Tony Williams? I remember reading somewhere about the fact that that club you were playing in, that Miles came into town.
Big place, yeah.
And you were a kid still. You were still only like 6 or 7 or something.
Yeah, about 7, 8 years old.
I mean, that must have blown your mind.
67, I think it was. 67 or 68. They had just finished the Miles Smiles record. And they were playing some of that music on that gig, as I remember. Listening to them play like The Sorcerer and Freedom Jazz Dance and stuff like that.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. I can still see it in my mind.
Wow. Yeah. So literally from that age, you knew this is what you wanted to do. There was no other way you were going any other place.
Yeah, knowing it without knowing it. I didn't know how serious it was going to be, but I just knew at that time that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't care about anything else. I was always, practicing on the drums or a pillow. I was always tapping, banging on stuff, trying to work out these rhythms I've heard other people, play. And they were at that time in Baltimore, they were like all these great musicians, at that time. And, I was always around them trying to pick up on things and just constantly trying to learn, keeping these things open to hear and listen to everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the discipline was there from early on. Because I think sometimes with younger drummers today, they don't spend maybe enough time listening.
Yeah. Well,
is that true to say?
That is very true to say. And they don't like to do any history either. And I have to say this, a lot of them don't have any respect. They don't have any remorse. They don't have any fear.
Right.
Especially the respect. With some of these guys, when I do drum clinics and things like that, I normally get questions asked, about, the difference between, the music I grew up listening to, the things that inspired me versus what's going on now. And then when you tell them the truth, something they don't want to hear, then it goes into this, well, you're old school. And I'm going like, and I ask him, okay, so
Right.
if you're going to make that comment, what is old school? Explain to me what that is. And then they explain it, and I'm like, and I'll wait till they finish, answering that. And I'll say like, look, like everything I've heard that what you call this, what you guys do, it's got old school in it. There's nothing new about any of this stuff, man. This stuff has been regurgitating for years. Like the older you get, the more you see this big circle that happens.
Yeah.
It's the same old thing. It's just polished up like a polished up turd, and they put it back out and they put a new title on it, such as the gospel chops, the what is it called? Man, that group Nirvana with what was that music called?
Well, indie. What is the name of it at the time? What, indie rock?
It was called something else. But anyway, you listen to that, and then like with that generation of that time, that's what they hear, and they think that's new. But for me, who was born in 1959, going through the 60s, when I listen to Grand Funk Railroad, I can hear Nirvana.
Sure.
When you listen to Led Zeppelin, you can hear Nirvana.
Yeah.
So, they don't want to call it rock; they call it whatever they called it. And so, they just polish this crap up and put it out there, and it's supposed to be this new style of music, which is something I've heard in the 70s.
And you actually, I think at about 13 or 14, you supported Art Blakey. Is that true? That's amazing.
Yeah. I got pictures at my house somewhere. I'm still trying to find those things.
Because he was one of the greats of all time. I mean, just an amazing drummer. And he was the traditional grip, wasn't he, I think?
Yeah. Every now and then he would switch to a match grip. So did Buddy Rich, actually.
Did he? I didn't know that. I thought he was all
videos of him doing it. Although he downplayed it on some video, trying to explain that he would never play match grip. And then you look at these videos and you see him playing match grip.
Right, amazing. So you get the call from Parliament-Funkadelic. So how did that happen? How did you end up in that band?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you know the story where I was supposed to play with James. Well, I was offered the gig to play with James Brown.
That. Whoa.
When I was like 13 or 14 years old. I think I was 13. And how that happened was James Brown had a club called the James Brown Motor Inn that was in Baltimore, downtown Baltimore. I just happened to be playing in his place, in his establishment. I go to the bathroom on break, and I can hear some guy singing, mimicking words, not clearly. By the time I got to the sink, the guy is standing right next to me, and he's singing something I couldn't relate to or don't know what it was. I happened to look up in the mirror, and I see his face, and I didn't connect the dots right away. Still washing my hands, and I'm like, oh man, I know that guy from somewhere. I looked up again, and I freaked out. It was James Brown standing right next to me, picking out his hair. And he was there he was doing business, to pick up some money from the place. And I introduced myself, playing at his place and da-da-da-da-da. It would be an honor if you come to hear the band and blah, 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 blah. And he never looked at me. He just kept picking out his afro and, yeah, kid, whatever. And then somewhere during the second set, this door opened, And this entourage of people came in, and this one big guy, man, this guy looked like a big, gigantic refrigerator, you know, huge. It was his bodyguard. And they came in and they sat in the corner, and I had already warned or told the band about it, the band that I was playing with. I told them. They didn't believe me. So on break, again, this big guy comes over and he says, Mr. Brown requests your presence at his table. I go over. Yeah, kid, nice backbeat. You know, how old are you? And I told him how old I was. Yeah. Listen, you know, what do you feel putting your backbeat to my music? I'm like, man, yes. Are you kidding me? And then reality set in. My mom is she's not gonna let me do that. And I told him, I was like, my mom's not gonna let me do this. And at that time, he was a strong advocate of, school, don't be a fool, stay in school. That was his motto and all that. And he asked for the number, my number, and he was going to talk to my mom. Every day for like 2 months, I kept asking mom, while I was at school, did he call? No. And I gave up on it. I'm like, he's not going to call. One day the phone rang, and it was somebody, this lady named Dottie or somebody like that from James Brown office called. And my mom sent me to another room, and she's talking to the secretary and started talking to James, and James wouldn't offer a tutor.
Wow.
And that was the end of that. So, of course, after that incident, I just hated school.
Yeah.
I mean, I hated it, vengeance, but thank God I didn't do it, because when I got with Parliament-Funkadelic, being around Bootsy Collins, Fred Wesley, and Maceo, the stories they told me about James, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't do it, That was a tyrant.
He used to find people for mistakes, didn't he?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like every time they put that robe on him, he's looking at people's shoes and their outfits, and then he'll like flash. You don't see this hand moving because it's a cape, and he's flashing what row they're in, and yeah.
He was hardcore, man.
But then I found out from James and Bootsy, he would, I think it was like 40 minutes before show, he would say, okay, we're going to wear black tonight, or we're going to wear whatever the color scheme is. So guys are rushing around at the last minute trying to make sure their suits are nice and pressed and all that. And then, I think it was like 10 minutes before the show, he changed his mind. So now everybody's running back trying to, and that's why those guys' suits and whatever they were wearing were not pressed, and shoes are not shined and all that.
And then obviously onto Santana. Well, no, John Scofield. You played with John after that, didn't you? I think you went from Parliament-Funkadelic to John Scofield. Is that the right timeline?
Well, no. Yes, sort of. But what happened was, after somewhere during my years with P-Funk, and I also toured with the Jacksons as well.
Oh, wow.
And that was the 79, 80 short tour I did with them, subbing. While I was still with Parliament-Funkadelic, I left Funkadelic in 85. But before I left, I was the inside drummer or inside musician with Sugar Hill Labels. So I did a lot of those rap recordings with Doug Wimbish, who's the bass player that played with Living Color. And then we also had a band, while we were doing that, also busy with Funkadelic, we had a band called Chops, which was the Police's horn section. Yeah, and a record came out of that stuff, and that was my first time doing something with Sting, because Sting also he sang on 1 or 2 tracks on those records, which a lot later, I had to turn around and do an audition for Sting. Passed the audition, but at the time, management, Miles Copeland, had sabotaged it.
What reason?
He acted like that audition I did didn't pass, that never happened. Well, I mean, when I got the call, I told him I don't do auditions, because there's a lot of music out there with me on it.
Yeah.
If you want to hear it, there it is. And I don't live in New York. And somehow they convinced me to come up to New York and do the audition. Went there, passed it. And this was 2 weeks prior to me going to Japan to do the Pick Hits record with Scofield. So, passed the audition. I told John about it. John was looking for a sub because he knew I was going to do the Sting thing. I say so I passed the audition. What happened after that was Sting was trying to get me to do this rehearsal tour, is what he called it. And I told him, look, man, within a week, less than a week, I'm going to be on tour with Scofield, trying to finish up this or do the tour, Japanese tour, do the Pick Hits record, and when I come back, then I can make the tour with him, with Sting. Miles and Sting agreed that, I was supposed to come in after.
Sure.
So they got Marvin Smitty Smith to play. I don't know if you know Marvin.
Yeah, sure.
They got him to play, and I heard some of the stuff Marvin played with Sting, and it was amazing. I thought, well, it's over for me because Marvin's got the gig now. Well, then they fired Marvin for some strange reason that I can't tell you about, but they fired him, which I thought was a mistake because they hired some guy, some French guy, and it wasn't Manu Katché. It was some other guy that they hired, and Sting wasn't happy with him. Which was all that was okay because I'm coming in anyway.
Yeah.
Man, it was like 2 weeks before Sting's tour, no phone call. A week before, I'm calling the FBI management company, and that's when I found out.
IRS, I think, wasn't it? It was IRS. Was that the company?
It was the FBI. I think you could be right.
Yeah, I think it's IRS. Yeah.
So I'm calling them, and that's when I found out that Miles Copeland's got amnesia about the whole thing. Oof. And he was the one that paid me the money, for the train fare and all that stuff to come up to do the audition. And yet he had amnesia. So years later, I'm with Santana, I see Sting, and Sting is asking me, what happened with us? What do you mean? And I told him it was Miles who sabotaged it. And Sting didn't know.
Wow. It often happens with management, though, doesn't it? In the background, they're moving and shaking stuff they shouldn't be tampering with, and artists don't even know about it. But it was quite working with John Scofield coming from Parliament-Funkadelic. That's quite a different style, fair to say. So what was it about, you think, that John liked about your playing? Because you were a funky player, more known for funk at the time. Would you say no?
Not really. I mean, I grew up playing a lot of fusion and jazz.
Right.
Especially in clubs in Baltimore. Gary Granger, the bass player that was with Scofield, he was with him. I'm with this band called Special Effects at the time. And we just happened to play in San Francisco the night that John arrived, or the day that John arrived in San Francisco.
Right.
We're staying at the same hotel. I ran into Gary in the lobby. He asking me, what am I doing there? I'm asking him what he's doing there, blah, 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 blah. We're playing at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. Gary asked if I could put him on the guest list, him plus one. I did. He brought Scofield over. Scofield see me playing with this band, Special Effects. But he also remembered hearing tapes of Funkadelic
right
when he was on tour with Miles. Come to find out, they were on the tour bus listening to a lot of live Funkadelic stuff.
Incredible.
So he remembered my name from that. And then with Gary being good friends with me at the time, it just all connected. Next thing I know, John is asking me to come to New York to do a recording for him, which was the Blue Matter record. And from that's when I learned I was in the band without even them telling me I was in the band.
Wild. So the Jacksons tour, that must have been a trip.
Yeah.
Do you remember it quite well, or was it?
Yeah, I remember the rehearsals, and certain gigs. I remember where, I remember the Jacksons when they were introducing the band and they were still calling me Jonathan Moffett or something like that. Because he was contracted to do the tour.
Oh, wow.
It was either him or somebody else. It was another drummer too who also did it.
Wild. Speaking of names, because your name is actually Milton Chambers, isn't that right? Dennis is a nickname.
Yeah, I was a menace when I was small.
Dennis the Menace. I didn't know you had the
name.
Beano in the US. Did you have the Beano comic? Because he was a character in obviously the Beano, Dennis the Menace. So what, you were just terrorizing local people or something?
I was terrorizing my friends. A few guys' body parts got broke because of me. I had this thing where I would jump out the window, in the second floor window, right? Somehow turn myself, grab onto the ledge.
Oh my God.
So my cousin came over and I, was showing him how to do it, like how to jump out and you don't get hurt and da-da-da-da-da. Well, he never looked out the window to see what was going on. So I jump up and down and I dive out, flip, grab the thing. And then I put my face down and act like, okay, Bobby, come on out. I made it. Next thing I know, he jumps. I'm coming. He jumps. And I can see him. He jumps and I can see his face smiling, but he's looking at me and all of a sudden everything went to slow motion. His face, that smile turned into a frown and like a serious concerned look. And when he hit the ground, he broke his leg, broke his arm.
Oh, God.
Because my father broke me up.
But they must have been very proud of you, your mum and your dad, because they obviously believed in you from a young age, and then to see your career going on to be one of the best drummers in the world. So it must have been wonderful for them to see that happen.
Yeah, my father died a long time ago, but I think I was playing with Scofield when he died, right? And my mom is awfully proud of me. Yesterday was her birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mum, if you're listening. Yeah, it's nice when you've got it. Well, I mean, obviously both your parents, but if they believe in you, it really helps, because it's a tough world, let's be honest.
Man, I have to tell you, man, all the noise that came out of that basement at my mom's house, I don't know how she did it. And at that time, in Baltimore, we were living in row houses. And when I think back on all that noise that came out of that basement with those neighbors, never called the cops. I mean, to try to do that now, they would be calling the SWAT team or something.
Right.
Because I had these custom-made stereo speakers, Polk audio speakers. And I think I was running like 2,500 watts power going through them.
Wow. And
it sounded like a concert was in my mom's basement and me playing drums over top of it, My neighbor, Miss Francine, she told my mom she could tell when I was home because all her dishes and plates would be in the floor, from all that rattling that was going on.
But I mean, if you think of that story you told about the chap Rat, discovering you, and that's just so wild. I mean, it's like it's Providence or something. This was meant to happen. I know that sounds a little, but you know what I mean? It's like a guy driving by the house, hears drums, goes in, you end up playing in the club. I mean, it's a crazy story.
I mean, when I look back and think about my career, first of all, I've been very, very blessed and very, very lucky, right? So, I mean, because I have a lot of friends that are just as talented or more, and they can't catch a break. And yet, I just happen to be at the right place at the right time and doing the right things, I guess, and not pissing people off and, just trying to treat people the way I like to be treated. And, it's the old saying is like if the band members don't want you on the bus, then you won't be touring.
Your face has to fit.
Yeah.
And I think I know a lot of top session guys have, as a producer, worked them over the years. And that's the one thing I've noticed with all you guys, Blair Cunningham is a friend of mine and Hamish Stewart and, Robbie McIntosh with McCartney for years, they're good mates. And they played here actually. And they're just such beautiful people. So I think that maybe, I wager to say, I still think you're an amazing drummer and have the edge on most people I've ever seen is with time. Your time. The thing I loved about the show last night, the time. Everyone had a great time. Yeah. Even Lainey. I don't mean even Lainey, but Lainey was like, her time is great. You're all locked in, and that thing about the discipline of working together and the respect, the inter-respect. I think So I think there are quite a few other elements at play besides being a really good player. You know what I mean? There's all those other things that need to happen for you to have a successful career. That people know they've got dare I say, a pair of safe hands.
Yeah, yeah. But if you turn around and think about this too, now when you go to these pop concerts or
Yeah,
rap concerts, pop and stuff, and you see people really not singing anymore. They're not really performing anymore. Really performing. They're not really singing. They're not really playing anymore. And I won't name any names, but I can tell you that. Let me see. The first group that done such is Earth, Wind and Fire.
Wow.
The Pyramid Tour, where I think 50% of that show was to a tape.
Oh,
they recorded. They went in the studio, and it not just only them, but Prince as well.
Right.
I mean, think about it. On the Prince tour, what was the Purple Rain tour? And it's an amazing show with both of those acts. Amazing show, but you take Prince and you see the drummer standing up, and he's got a spotlight in the bass drum, a real spotlight in the bass drum, and he don't have any other drums. He's got a snare drum, bass drum, and a cymbal, and yet you hear a drum kit.
Right.
And then you hear the sounds of the recording, like the hand claps and all that stuff, the original tracks.
Sure.
Well, who's doing that? Who's
Yeah.
playing drum? I went to see Mariah Carey, and I see 3 background singers, and she didn't even know their names.
Right.
Because when she went to introduce them, she went over there and asked them, "What's your name, honey?" "Sir, what's your name?" And they, anyway, so she's got 3 background singers, and you hear a choir. Well, where's the choir? She had 2 keyboard players, bass player, and a drummer, and they sounded amazing. But then you heard all this other stuff, percussion, and like an orchestra sometimes. Well, where's this orchestra?
So your feeling is there's too much playback?
Yeah,
Way too much.
Yeah.
They should have people playing it. They should have people up there playing the
well,
part.
what's the point if you? I mean, I was called to play in some bands, and the reason why I turned them down is because I can't see myself mimicking myself.
Right.
I came too far to learn how to play this instrument behind me, to, the sweat, the pain, the time I spent into doing this, and what I'm going to get out of it now is to mimic myself? No, thanks. Why should I mimic myself when I can play it?
Exactly.
And yet, that's what people do now. You go to these concerts, and it's a gigantic karaoke show going on up there.
Is there anyone around that you respect at the moment? You think like new artists that you've seen of the last few years that you thought, now that's the real deal?
Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars?
He's one of them. And I'm quite sure there's a whole lot of them that, which I probably don't know any, I don't know them.
Right.
But I'm quite sure there's some that's still playing, but the bulk of them are not playing anymore. They got a Pro Tool rig right behind them.
And anybody within the jazz community that you've seen recently that you really rate?
Yeah, there's Funky Knuckles. There's Kneebody. Ghost Note. Ghost Note is really insane. I don't know if you know them.
Yeah, Ghost Note, of course.
That band is really, really insane. Spud's doing a great job with that band, that unit. And I'm quite down. There's a few others. I just saw this band play in San Francisco, and I can't remember the name, but that was incredible. He had this drummer. It's like 20 years old. And I think his name is Jared Spalding.
Right.
Or Jared Spears. Insane. Really, really insane.
So if you were to give advice to, say, young kids drumming now, what would it be? What would be the main piece of advice you would say to them?
Listen to all styles of music, man. Try to learn all styles of music. Try to keep your ears open. Just those things. Try to learn all styles of music. Try to play all styles of music. If you hate something, at least know why you hate it. Because if somebody asks you, why do you hate that? The last thing you don't want to come off is like, you say to somebody, I don't know why I don't hate it. Well, the thing is, if you give that answer, you don't really hate it. You just don't understand it.
Yeah, of course.
Because hate is a big word,
So attention to detail as well. Obviously, like when you were growing up playing drums, the fact that, even that, talking again about holding the phone books between, I mean, I've never heard of anyone else ever doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you used to sit in front of the mirror, didn't you, a lot of the times, and
Yeah.
watch your posture. And
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear of drummers tending to detail that much. So you were really digging in to get it absolutely as brilliant as you could possibly get it?
Yeah, man, I went through all kind of habits,
Rituals.
Playing on quarters, playing on phone books, playing on pillows, trying to develop like great hand technique, speed, using the fingers, using the wrist, when to use them, when not to use them. But mainly like trying to play on like quarters or coins, and try to do a roll, without the coin flying off the table, to develop some kind of control with your hands. And also to be consistent where you hit on the drum kit. Because if you hit dead center, dead center of the drums, you're going to get a nice, big, fat, great, true sound from it. Which is learning, it's just going back to learning how to hit the drum. A lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but some drummers at this day and age, they bang on the drums. They don't really hit them, or they don't really play the drums. They use the whole arm to go through it, which is like you're going through the kit at that point. Well, you don't have to use your whole arm to play.
So on that power side, I mean, Billy Cobham would have been a big influence for you? Yeah, because he really hit him hard, didn't he?
Yeah.
He does hit him hard still.
Yeah. And also we can play him. He plays very light. If you ever saw him with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, which when I first saw him play, it was with Horace Silver. Yeah, Horace Silver. That was in '68, and then when 69, and then I saw him again with the Mahavishnu Orchestra. I couldn't believe that was the same guy. I refused to believe it was the same guy, but yet it was. And the reason why I felt that way, because, when I saw him play with Horace Silver, he was playing like straight ahead.
Sure.
Playing like sort of like Tony Williams type of thing in his own way. And then I see him with the Mahavishnu with this new music. And, the guitar player playing like 64th notes on the guitar, and they're playing all these different weird time signatures, and all that stuff. Just blew me away. I just could not believe. And a big kit, 2 bass drums. Well, when I first saw him play with the Mahavishnu, it was a single bass drum. Then the second time I saw him, it was 2 bass drums and 3 ride toms and 3 floor toms. And, I mean, blowing the roof off the place.
Difficult question. If you had to pick one drummer, your favorite of all time, who would it be?
I can't.
I know it's a difficult question, but
I would say Billy Cobham.
Really?
Or Tony Williams.
So those two.
How do you say? See, it's hard. I mean, because they're all my favorites, but I think the guys who influenced me the most is with Tony Williams and Billy Cobham.
And over your life, obviously you started very young, and you're still hugely busy all the time. Has your relationship with music changed over the years?
Yeah, a lot, because music has changed a lot over the years. When I think back on, going through the 60s and 70s and 80s, where, the artists were more or less, writing from their hearts, writing from their souls, writing from their minds, versus to now people just, they call themselves writers, but they sampling stuff. And,
yeah.
They take the heart of the song, and it's a sample of something that was done a long time ago. And then, they may put like another drum beat on it, which is another sample of a drum beat. That's not creating. That's not true creating,
15 people writing a song. I mean, how does that work? And obviously touring, as you get a little older, gets tougher. If you're out on the road for a long period of time, do you still enjoy touring, or do you find it tougher these days? Or?
Yeah, it's a little tough because of the airlines.
Right.
TSA agents, or airlines with, like delayed and canceled flights, which makes sure they're a little harder and longer.
Yeah, I flew back to London 2 weeks ago. It was 8 hours because of delays with fog. I was sitting on the plane for 3 hours. It was torture. Everyone was getting really angry in the plane. Luckily, I had some movies and I just had to grin and bear it, like I can't change the situation. But literally, well, you know this, literally most flights I get now are delayed.
Yeah.
They're never on time.
Yeah.
You get the 1 out of 20.
Yeah, and they all have apologies, but nobody want to give you, at least some of your money back.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's weather,
Yeah.
That's the old excuse.
God.
So, what do you think, especially when you've gone into jazz, what do you think the challenges are about being a jazz musician against being, say, a pop musician?
That's a good question. I would say, just trying to still try to do something and be truthful and honest about what you're doing at the time you're, or just playing for the moment. That it still lingers with me. As far as every time I sit behind this instrument, I'm trying to be the best that I can be at that time, at that moment, and trying to play for the moment, not try to play something I remembered yesterday.
Right.
Or try to play something I've heard somebody else do at that moment. I'm listening to what's going on around me at the time, and I'm trying to play for that moment.
Right. Yeah. So, is there anyone that you wish you'd have played with, or you'd like to play with now, like someone left out? Because you've done worked with so many artists. Is there anyone you'd really love to work with?
Stevie Wonder, Jimi Hendrix. I had an offer to play with Miles Davis, but I hung up on him 3 times. So I blew that.
Why was that?
Well, I was playing with Scofield. Somebody gave me a videotape in Italy. They gave me a videotape and told me, whatever you do, don't lose this tape. Okay, so I brought the tape home, put it in the VCR. It's Miles Davis with the Gil Evans Orchestra.
Wow.
Before it came out.
Wow.
Now it's out. But my copy still had the time code on it. Right, I'm watching this. The phone rings. And somebody from Peter Shugart's office, his secretary, asking for Dennis Chambers, and identified myself. And then Peter gets on the phone and said he had Miles Davis, that wants to talk to me. Miles gets on the phone, and I'm thinking it's one of my friends playing a prank.
Sure.
I thought it was Bill Evans, the saxophone player.
Sure.
I'm like, dude, I know it's you, da-da-da-da-da-da, like, I don't have time for this. I'm going to count to 3 and hang up. I hung up on him. Another call came in. It was from Peter Shugart's office. Make a long story short, it was Miles Davis.
Wow.
And he asked me would I join the band, and I never said no, and I never said yes. And
why were you sitting on the fence? Why were you sitting on the fence?
Because a friend of mine who was his drummer, which is Miles' nephew at the time, Vince Wilburn, and I can't take a job from a friend.
Right.
That knew he wanted the job. So I didn't say yes or no. I just want to make sure I call Vince up and let him know that your uncle is looking for a drummer.
Sure.
So whatever's going on there, if you want to do this tour or do the gig with Miles or keep your job with him, you got to clear whatever that, straighten whatever that is up.
Absolutely.
But and I told him, I was like, dude, I'm not going to do it. But if Miles is looking, eventually, sooner or later, he's going to find somebody else if you don't straighten up or try to figure, talk to your uncle about what's going on here, And he ended up with Ricky Wallman.
Oh, great player.
Phenomenal player.
So, another difficult question, but of all the people you played with, huge amounts of people, who is your favorite person to play with?
That's a good question, too. I would say George Clinton, Funkadelic, Scofield, and McLaughlin. I really love playing with McLaughlin. And Mike Stern, of course.
Yeah, Mike's amazing, yeah.
But McLaughlin, he just, You know, when he bring you in the band and he present you this piece of music, you have to find your way through it. He'll allow you to like just, do what you do with this music that he present to you. And he don't tell you anything about, like what he wants. He wants to hear what you come up with. Because with that's how you develop a band sound.
Sure.
When you let the band do what it do what it does, That's the reason why, like all these bands that you've heard, from the 70s, whether it's a rock, or a funk thing, they just, the artists let them create their own parts.
And what was great when we were coming here today was you told me you'd played with Jack Bruce, but it was never released.
Yeah.
Andy Summers, you and Jack Bruce, which was amazing. You had some of those demos we played in the van. Mm-hmm. That would have been great. I mean, that'd be great to hear now, wouldn't it? All these years later.
Yeah.
Should have a word with Margaret, his wife. Obviously, Jack's not with us anymore, but Jack was one of the greats as well. I mean, at least you got to play with Jack.
And he was a great human being.
Yeah, he's one of my best friends, so I miss him terribly.
Me too.
So you've got a show on at the Jazz Dock tonight, isn't it? I think it's Jazz Dock you're playing tonight. And then the tour, how long does it go on for?
Let me see. I go back home on the 12th. Today is the 1st. Yeah, I got about 11 more days.
Okay, well, that'll be fun. Is it one after another? Is it pretty tight or...
Yeah, but
days off?
It's real easy at this point. I think every place we're playing now, we got 2 nights at it. So, which is cool with me.
And after this, recording-wise, touring-wise?
I have about 4 days at home, and then I come right back to Europe with another unit. With Bobby Sparks, and this bass player, female bass player, Fresher. I can't remember her last name.
I was going to ask you one favor. I mean, we're in the room here where we actually, you performed last night. The kit's still there. I know, you've got so many fans out there. If there's like anything for a minute or two that you could play on the kit that you could kind of show the kids out there, what they should be doing. Is there any way you could do that for a minute? Would you be all right about doing it?
Try it.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Anyway.
If I get out this low chair.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Dennis.